Sleeves here with the Senior Pickleball Report powered by TNC Network. Let's get it going. Today on People of Pickleball, we have the OGs of Pickleball Podcasting, Eddie and Webby. And we had quite a conversation. I love those guys. I was on an episode of Dinking Around, which you can check out in the link in the description. But before we get to that, if you like this content, consider subscribing to the channel. Give us a like. Give us a comment as well. Also, check out all the links in the description with discounts, our merch page, our website, our newsletter. Get involved. All right, folks. Well, it's time for Eddie and Webby. All right, honored to have these two on. Welcome to the Senior Pickleball Report, Eddie and Webby.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you. This is great. This is a little flip of the script for Eddie and I. We're usually the ones doing the interviewing, so it's been a while since this happened.
It has been a while.
Yeah, a lot of pressure on me. That's why I'm drinking. I don't want to screw this up.
Yeah,
that's
cheers.
why we're drinking too.
That's right.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers.
No pressure. No
That's
pressure.
Right. No pressure. So I was on episode 93. You guys are approaching 100 of Dinking Around. Yeah, Dinking Around. Boy, that thing's an earworm. That's just all day in my head. So before we get to that and, the sort of the genesis of your podcast and, being the OGs that you are, and really the first podcast I ever came across that was about pickleball, we have to find out how you got into the game. And I know, Webby, we touched on this a little bit when I was on your show. So I'll start with Eddie. Talk about how this silly whippleball game came into your atmosphere.
It's kind of crazy. So my wife and I moved to Florida going on almost 11 years ago. I grew up in Michigan. Webby and I are good high school buddies. We've been best friends since high school. 11 years ago, moved down to Florida, moved into a community, and I saw that they had advertised pickleball courts. And I'm like, what the hell is pickleball? I had no idea what it was at that time. And I thought maybe it was like some variation of bocce ball or some sport that all the old people that, that were living in this community were playing. And then I showed up to the courts as they were being built, and I saw they're like, oh, they're mini tennis courts, right? And then I started to play in my community here and there a little bit, but none of us knew what the hell we were doing, man. Like we didn't even know how to keep score, anything like that. But slowly it started to grow on me. And then around 2017 is when I started to become more serious about it. My community was about 5 miles down the road from East Naples Community Park, where the U.S. Open is at every year.
Yeah.
Obviously, Naples is, what is it? The self-titled pickleball
capital of the world.
Whatever. There you go. Thanks for remembering that. The pickleball capital of the world, right? So I was surrounded by pickleball, and then lo and behold, I started to play a little bit. I got Webby involved in it a little bit. I was going to be up in Michigan for a few weeks in the summer of 2018. Webby and I were making plans when to hang out. He came across the Beer City Open pickleball tournament. Him and I were, huge into craft beer. So we're like, yeah, let's sign up for it. It sounds great. Ended up going to that tournament. I'm sure Webby touched on it a little bit. Got our asses kicked. We had no idea what we were doing out there, and immediately fell in love. Made some great relationships with the Grand Rapids, Michigan pickleball community. Meanwhile, we were launching a podcast that was very little we focused very little on pickleball. And then after that, it basically became 100% pickleball. And then that led to us having the top pros in the game on during that time. That led to us having, owners of paddle companies and instructors. And that led to, live streaming pickleball events, commentating at pickleball events. You name it. That led to me building a relationship with Simone Jardim and starting a YouTube channel with her. It just took off, and it kind of followed what pickleball was back then. It was this grassroots movement from a sport that we all loved, with that backyard barbecue feel that you could play however you want. And that's kind of how our story got started. And really, it's now at a point right now where pickleball is taken off. It's huge. started a business in pickleball with Close Call Replay. Webby and I are still going strong. We had almost 100 episodes of the Eddie and Webby podcast. We're almost on episode 100 of Dinking Around. It's just crazy, man. I mean, probably a similar story to you where we fell in love with the game and our passion for it just kind of took off and it became something.
Yeah, and Webby and I touched upon this on episode 93, which you can see on the Eddie Webby podcast. And we both talked about just how, and you guys better than me. I'm a COVID baby through this sport, like most people are, but you guys were prior to that, and I always look at sort of before COVID, in those who were playing for the love of the game and came across this quirky sport. So, Webby, maybe fill in some of the gaps here because obviously, we touched upon this, but share it with my audience. Some of the relationships that you built, just for starting to play in a gym floor and thinking, oh, this is cool. I'm hanging out with some old folks, and then next thing you're dealing with with Draper.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy the different opportunities I've had because of this sport. And one thing I do want to touch back on is when I first learned about the sport. So, like Eddie said, he's the one that learned about it first, and then he asked me if I had ever heard of pickleball. And when he first brought it up, I kid you not, I really thought that he was setting me up for an inappropriate joke because pickleball, I mean, it seemed like something so outrageous it couldn't be real.
Yeah.
And we were actually, for my bachelor party, me and a core group of our friends, we went down to Florida for my bachelor party, and Eddie had said, hey, we should try to play pickleball while you guys are down here. And again, I still didn't really know much about the sport, and we never ended up playing the sport. So I still came home thinking this sport can't be real because he had a chance to show it to me. He didn't show it to me. But then one day I was disc golfing, and what I thought were tennis courts, I heard this really weird sound coming from them. So I walked over to them, and sure enough, here are these little tiny mini tennis courts where people were playing this sport with a wiffle ball. And then I looked at the wall, or I looked at the fence, and on the sign, it mentioned pickleball. And I was like, holy crap, Eddie was not pulling my leg. This thing is real. And so I immediately bought the cheapest paddles I could find on Amazon. And then I forced my wife and daughters to play with me. And even though I know we definitely were not playing correctly, it just something about it clicked with me right away. And I was like, oh man, if I actually start playing this like with people that know what they're doing, I could see myself getting hooked on this. And sure enough, when I did play with people that knew how to play, like it was over with. The addiction started almost immediately. But then going back to what you were saying, some of the crazy opportunities that I've had over the years because of this sport. One of the wildest things that happened, I was playing in Royal Oak, Michigan at some outdoor courts, and I saw somebody playing on one of the far courts that looked very familiar. And I kept watching him. I'm like, man, he kind of looks like Chris Draper from the Red Wings, but I know it's definitely not him, but it kind of resembles him. So I asked my buddy as I was on my way out, and I was like, hey, that's not Chris Draper over there, is it? And he was like, oh yeah, he plays here all the time. And so it was just I couldn't believe it. And he had left like right before I was getting ready to leave because I was going to try to approach him and say something, but it just didn't work out. So then I asked my buddy, I was like, so you said he plays there all the time. Do you think he would possibly be interested in being on our podcast? Because back then, this is when pickleball still was like not very well known at all. So it blew my mind that this top tier pro athlete was playing the sport. So he ended up getting me in touch with him. Actually, he gave him my phone number, so I wasn't even expecting this. While all of a sudden one day I get a phone call, and I don't normally answer phone calls from numbers I don't recognize, but I answered it this day.
Right.
And on the other line, the guy was like, hey, is this Webby? And I was like, yeah. And not many people knew me as Webby back then. And so I was like, yeah. And he was like, hey, this is Chris Draper from the Detroit Red Wings. And it just, I couldn't believe it. At first I thought it was a joke, but like I could recognize his voice because I remember all the interviews from when they won the Stanley Cups and stuff. And I knew that was his voice. So we got to talking. He loved the idea of coming onto our podcast because he also wanted to help spread awareness about the sport because he wanted more people to get involved too, because back then, like there weren't enough people playing, and we wanted more like high level players to join us and stuff. We didn't. I was getting like I love the senior citizens, but I was getting a little tired of playing on gymnasiums with senior citizens at the senior centers. So I was really hoping to get more young people involved in the sport and stuff like that. But that right there was probably one of the biggest pinch me moments is when we had Chris Draper on our podcast.
Yeah, and I think that, the same thing. I've had those moments of like I'm talking to so and so, and this is really weird, and then this person's calling me by my nickname, Webby or Sleeves or whatever it happens to be, and you're like, holy cow, this is sort of surreal. And you guys, I'm sort of following some of your the things you went through. Then you enter a tournament and you think you're good, and you are horrible. And you're like, oh my god, I have no idea what I'm doing, and then you go back to the drawing board, and you get your butt kicked a while. But it's one thing, obviously, for all of us to play this game and love it. It's another thing to jump in and, as Eddie mentioned, start businesses, start a podcast, get involved highly where you're dealing with people who are at high levels of the game. And Eddie, I know you mentioned right in the beginning that the podcast initially was not just pickleball. In fact, it was a small part of it. So walk us through kind of what your idea was when you guys were like, well, let's start a podcast.
Well, I had to really, really convince Webby to start it. We had started our YouTube channel, and it was basically vlogs and crap that no one really cares about. And I was like, oh, let's start a podcast. Let's do it. If it sucks, who cares? Let's just go out there and do it. And I had to really, really work on him hard to be able to kind of get him on board.
Yep.
And he was. And really, when our podcast started, there were 3 topics. It was craft beer, it was technology, and it was pickleball. So craft beer, I was a certified beer homebrew judge. I brewed my own beer for a very long time. So craft beer has always been something very important to me. And Webby, I kind of got him hooked on it about 10 years ago or so.
Yeah.
Technology, Webby and I both work in technology for our full-time jobs. And then pickleball, again, it was a small thing. But then we just started to realize there's so much more we could do with pickleball. There are these pros that are incredible, but nobody knows about them. And what was the most telling to me was I was on an RV trip. I was in Hilton Head, South Carolina, maybe 3 miles from, I think it's Palmetto Dunes. Is that the big resort there? And it was a week before an APP event was going on. And this was still when APP had a lot of the top pros playing in it. And I played with a group of pickleball players who play every morning at 9:30, every single morning. They are obsessed with it. And I asked them, I'm like, hey, are any of you guys going to the APP event at Palmetto Dunes? And they're like, what are you talking about? And I was like, yeah, there's a professional pickleball event like a mile down the road. And they're like, there's professional pickleball? And that's when I'm like, all right, there's a problem here. And the problem is, why are we not able to get the people who religiously play pickleball to actually know about, care about, and watch professionals? And that's why Webby and I were kind of like, let's start treating these pros like pros. Let's make them into superstars. Let's let them tell their story, have people fall in love with them. And that could be a way that we can try and help grow the sport organically. We didn't ask anything of these pros. We didn't want anything from them. We just wanted to give them the platform to be able to talk about themselves and allow people to get to know them. And that ultimately led to us having, like I said, pretty much all the top pros on leading up to 2021. I don't remember when we changed directions, but there was a long run where we had the top pros on, and I hope it helped.
I think it has, because when I first got into this, it was 2021 when I first started playing. It was early 2022 when I first started a podcast. And most of the people that I came around in different groups of part of the countries that I was going to, I'd say 90% of them had never seen pro pickleball, and maybe 60% of them had never even heard of it. I think most people now have heard of it. I do still think there's a gigantic number of amateurs that have not watched it or don't give a crap about it on some level, which is fine. And as we know, the drama that ensues with when you get into that landscape. So Webby, why the shift? Eddie just talked about a shift in, you kind of top pros, and then obviously you decided kind of maybe to change the format a little of the pod.
Yeah, so like Eddie said, we were one of the only formats out there, one of the only platforms that really heavily featured the pro players and got their names out there, got people to learn about who they are as people outside of pickleball also. And then I feel like once the PPA really got involved, and then especially when the exclusive contracts started, and then once the pros were able to make a living on pickleball, I feel like egos kind of got a lot bigger, and it started to get to the point where we would have somebody scheduled to be on, and then they just wouldn't show up, or like they would say like a few minutes beforehand, "Oh man, sorry, totally forgot," or something like that. And it was getting to the point because beforehand, like people were reaching out to us to be on the podcast, and they loved the fact that they were on here. But once they had the PPA to kind of help spread awareness of their names, there were some people out there that just, I don't know, it just became too egotistical for some of them. A lot of them are still totally down to earth and great people, but
Oh yeah.
a lot of them now have like talent agents and things like that. And it was just like, you know what, honestly, this isn't fun for us anymore. Like we don't need to have the pro players on here. So then we were like, you know what, let's end the original podcast, because I feel like people mainly associated the original Eddie and Webby show with us having pro players on as guests. We put a lot of work into that podcast. We did a lot of pre-production work. We did a lot of planning, and I feel like a lot of people don't realize how much work actually went into it. And it was like, you know what, it's almost not even worth all this work we're putting into this podcast. But what we really enjoyed and had a lot of fun with was, at the time, our post podcast show that we called Dinking Around with Eddie and Webby. And that was a show that we would do it immediately after the original podcast ended. So we already had a couple drinks in our system, and we had absolutely nothing planned. It was just, let's talk about pickleball, see where it goes. And we just had an absolute blast with that. So we were like, let's just keep doing that. Let's not even do the really like produced show that the Eddie and Webby podcast was. So we ended that, put all our focus into Dinking Around with Eddie and Webby, and we still tweak it from time to time, but I really think our current iteration of our podcast is like one of the most fun things I've ever done involving our YouTube channel and our podcast, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, and you can tell the interaction that you two have is really cool. You can tell you're old friends. You have your little inside jokes with each other. And it's cool. I know exactly what you're talking about. You know, even if I get sometimes somebody on that's high level pro or something, you know, they'll be pulled over in a rest stop, maybe with their phone, you know, as they're driving, you know, up and down, you know, and like, how long is this going to take? And I'm like, oh, and the audio nightmare from that, you know, so, or they got then they changed the direction of the phone in mid conversation, and the lights coming through the windshield. And so, you know, it's a production nightmare. And I've done a lot of editing. I was a videographer for years and did weddings and reunions. And I'm like, oh God. And, you know, how do you tell them, listen, it'd be nice if you had some earbuds and you weren't driving your car, but you're already like, you're never going to get them back on. So there's that, which is why I'm drinking. So your last episode, I watched about an hour ago, and I think it ties in perfectly because we can end this. It's sort of the trilogy when Webby and I started talking about, you know, where's this crazy game going, and you guys talked about this pickleball growing too fast in the amateur and pro level. I thought, well, we could talk about what can we do to actually, if we were in charge, to change that. And that's a huge conversation that could take days and hours. To maybe narrow that down. Do you think the pro game, or I should say this, do you think the amateur game, what would change about the amateur game if the pro level game just went away on some level? Like, it might still be around, but it's not really on TV. You know, it's kind of like the old days. They're playing for, you know, a couple $1,000 or a couple $100 at some random tournament, and somebody might live stream it. Let's just say PPA MLP collapse. You know, it just kind of goes away like racquetball, like Eddie mentioned in your last episode. Eddie, where do you stand? Like, how does that impact the amateur game?
What's different? I mean, the fact is that we still have yet to figure out how to convert the millions of people that play pickleball to watch pro pickleball. So my immediate gut reaction to that would be there probably wouldn't be much of an impact. Most people, when they go to YouTube or Facebook or wherever media sources they get when it comes to pickleball, most people are going because they want to improve their third shot drop. They want to know how to beat their neighbor Bill, who always gets one gets one over on them every time they play. That's what they're going there for. Most players do not care about professional pickleball, and I hate to sound negative about it, but I don't think it's ever going to grow to the point to where I could say most pickleball players do care about professional pickleball. I just don't think it's the kind of sport that is going to ever convert to that same level. Most people don't play football, but most people like football. That's because it's football. I don't know that pickleball is ever going to be there. So personally, I think it's if the pro game went away or became what it was, let's say 5 years ago before the tour wars and before all that, I still think that pickleball is going to be one of the most popular sports, if not the fastest growing sport continuously in America and across the world. I mean, we see it popping up in Asia and Europe, Australia. I mean, so I don't know. I don't think it would hurt it nearly as much as other people might think.
I know, Webby, you probably already have your answer, but I'm going to change it up on you a little. What do you think about the technology end of it? Because you guys have a paddle sponsor, and obviously you follow the paddle game, and I review paddles. Does the paddle technology get driven as hard? And that could be good, bad, or indifferent depending on your point of view of the game and how it's set up. Do you think that changes for the amateur level if the pro game just doesn't become, all it's built up to supposedly become?
I could see that happening. And I honestly, I hope it does change because I do not like where things are headed, like with how fast the game has become. I mean, some of these paddles that are out there now, they're just ridiculous. And I think it has changed the sport for the worse. And I do hope that eventually something is done to get that under control because Eddie and I talked about this recently too. Like it never used to be the way it is now to where just everybody is a banger, it seems like. And people feel like they have to be a banger to keep up with everybody that's playing against them and new people that play now. I feel like everybody feels the need that they have to have eye protection and stuff because you just never know when you're going to get a shot to the eye. And it's just, I hope that things get fixed with the paddle technology. I don't like the direction that it has been heading, and I hope that gets taken care of soon.
Yeah. I don't think it will on some level. I think just because of how markets are driven and, we just keep the next latest thing, True Foam, whatever you want to call it, Gen 4. And it's, obviously USA Pickleball and UPA are both, talking about how they're going to change things and exit velocity, dwell time, all these things that none of us ever thought about when we first bought a paddle.
Right.
So Eddie, I mean, what's your sense of that? Is it going to get fixed on that end, or are we just going to become bullet ball, sort of like racquetball became? I mean, we're already there.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that's played amateur over the last 4 years at even like a 3-5 or higher level, I'm sure you've seen the transition out on the public courts, right? The game is speeding up. It's a lot more about attacking balls. You can do a lot more with these balls. You got to get out of the way a lot more. I don't know what the right solution is, but what I can tell you is that I do think that you got Carl Schmitz over at USA Pickleball. I think he's the CTO now. He's trying to get his arms around this in order to be able to make sure that there being a good governing body when it comes to this. And I hope that they're able to get their arms around this. And I honestly think it's going to go in the direction that maybe baseball went, where it was like, all right, we're going to have different equipment from a paddle or from an amateur perspective than we are from a pro perspective. Personally, I think that is the direction we have to go. And although there are different technologies that have, helped us get to where we are with the availability of actual pickleball balls, I think that could also be a play. Fine. Have these paddles as hard as they want, whatever. If we can figure out a way to be able to use the ball to be able to slow it down a little bit, that might be a different, a better direction, because no matter what, you're always going to have a huge market of paddles. It's just what people want. But most people don't care about having a variety of balls to play with. They usually have their one that they like. So let's find one that meets the needs of the game, that slows it down a little bit while still making it a challenge. And I think if somebody figures that out, that's going to take off. And hopefully that becomes the new gold standard for what ball is played with on both the professional and an amateur level.
Yeah, and maybe it becomes down to, types of, like, we'll just call them grades. Like, it's a grade 1 ball tournament, which means it's the softest ball or the hardest ball. It's a grade 2, it's a grade 3 tournament. And I think you're right. I think that's the easier fix is the ball. I mean, it's at least money wise, it seems that would be the easier fix as well, because people are spending all this time on all these different things and all these different measurements on these paddles. And if you just make the ball like a jugs ball or mushy, you're sort of back to what it is. You can still spin it and stuff like that, but you're not killing Myrtle with a knee brace because you hit, some drive. It reflected off her paddle, the guy next
Right.
to her. Um,
Right.
I think ultimately, and what do you guys think about this? And we can start with you, Webby. The international body really needs to kind of come forward here, because if we're going to get into the Olympics and this is going to be an Olympic thing, maybe that's what pulls everything together. It did. I played beach volleyball for 25 years. And when the Olympics came up in the mid 90s, it was similar to what it is now. There was a dominant American tour, and that was the dominant tour of the world. But they weren't running sort of the governing body of what's going to be handled to get it into the Olympics. And so the FIVB basically started their own league and said, okay, and what they did after the Olympics, the first one is they're like, okay, we're taking total control of this sport away from basically the American tour. They changed the ball, they changed the size of the court, and and they changed the scoring to rally all at the same time.
Oh man.
But what it did was it pulled everybody together to be on the same page. And I think that's something that maybe the PPA needs, because they've been sort of the big dog at this point and they don't really have any repercussions or consequences. But if there's a governing body that is going to get them into the Olympics, that is an international governing body, dare I say, they may have to submit.
Yeah,
Thoughts, Webby? You can take that big one. Maybe take a sip.
Yeah, a sip sounds good. No, but no, I do think it's going to eventually get into the Olympics, but it is going to take some like a better governing body. And man, some of the changes you made, if that ever happened in pickleball, I feel like people would riot. If like the size of the court changed and it was rally scoring and all that
everything
stuff.
at once,
man,
right?
can you
And it
imagine?
did.
But aren't there some governing bodies out there that are trying to focus on that? I forget the name of it, but do you remember?
Yeah, I
Eddie,
just
like,
don't know.
wasn't,
That's the thing. Like, what kind of power do they have if we don't even know their names?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, definitely needs to be something more focused on that. And I can't believe that it's already not closer than it is to getting into the Olympics. So somebody definitely needs to get on that. And yeah, if that's what it takes, if it takes changing the paddle technology a bit to qualify for something that would be international, like an international league, and get it into the Olympics, I would be all for something like that, as long as the changes aren't too drastic. Because if they change the court size and things like that could be a little crazy and not something I'm so sure I would want to happen.
Yeah, that feels more PPA like to me at this point, about changing different dimensions, because they've already talked about, let's widen the goalposts so
Right.
you don't have as many ATPs and da 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 da. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, the reason we have some of those things is because shit rolls downhill. You have paddles that can do this now, and it's just, you start to just compound all the problems, and then you want to blame it on the court size, and actually it's the game wasn't broke.
One thing I did recently is I played with the librarian ball. Have you played with that ball? It's like the foam ball that barely makes any noise.
I have, yes.
That actually,
my folks love it.
That was surprisingly, it was a lot better than I thought it would be. It was weird though, because like the fact that I couldn't hear the sounds, I feel like that threw off like my equilibrium at first. Like it was kind of weird. You could put a lot of spin on that ball too, but overall, I thought it was actually really good. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's like trying to catch a fly ball off a Nerf bat. Like there's something to do with the sound that actually, I think, helps you judge where things are going. And was it clean contact? Was it not clean contact? But yeah, my folks love it. My dad claims it's just easier on his elbow and his shoulder too. So
yeah, so I think going back to what you guys were starting to talk about, I do think changing the ball, that probably is the best way to go to kind of help deal with the current paddle technology. So I would be all for that kind of thing. And then if just imagine if the jugs ball became the ball, like then you would never have to worry about replacing the balls because
The
they will
gold
last forever.
standard.
Well, I remember back when I first started, I hated playing with the Onyx Pure 2 because I felt like it was a banger's ball and people could smack the hell out of that ball and it would always stay in. But now that the paddles have evolved, I almost think I'd rather try going back to that and seeing if that might help fix some of those issues.
Yeah, I could see that.
Right, right. It does. That Onyx ball. I play two places. I play here at the world's worst pickleball course out in the middle of nowhere. Then I go drive about 35 or 40 miles to go to a private court that these friends of mine own, and we play with the Onyx ball. And it bounces higher. It bounces about a ball higher than a 40x. And so it took me a while to get used to it, but I'm like, the rallies last longer because you can't put the ball away so easily either. It doesn't skid because it's not as hard a plastic. You have to be a little more, I guess, careful on your drops because if you just hit a big looping drop, somebody's just going to tee off on it a little more because it does bounce a ball higher. But I feel like the rallies are longer because as we get older, my defense isn't as good. I'm not as fast, but that ball keeps me in points a little longer than a Duro or a Franklin even would.
Well, speaking of the rallies lasting longer, that's another thing. Like I hate how quick a lot of rallies are, even at the high level these days, because something I like to do whenever I do a tournament vlog is I like to record some of the higher level players getting some good rallies in just for like an establishing shot, just to show some other people playing. But I always go to the higher level courts to get a good long rally to include in the video. And you'd be surprised at how long it takes for me to get a good long rally on video, even at the higher level courts, because a lot of these points end really, really quick now because people are just banging the hell out of the ball. The points don't last that much, or the points don't last that long. It's almost like tennis, because like tennis rallies don't last long at all. And that's, to me, that's part of the charm, is like the long, fun rallies involved in pickleball. I like seeing the cat and mouse game and stuff like that. So yeah, that kind of thing I've been seeing a lot lately.
Dare I say, I actually miss the Johns brothers because I enjoy the way they play. I know if you're not a pickleball person, you might just think it's really boring, but I always tell people the better you get at this game, the more you can appreciate what those two guys could do against people that are just ripping balls at them, especially Colin. He's just walking up casually, bunt, bloop, bunt, bloop. How many people have any idea what he's doing and how difficult that is? I mean, my mother can rip a ball. I mean, I'm not doing doink and it's dropping it in the kitchen every time. And I was just like bored walking up there. And I sort of miss that now that he's gone with Gabe because I get it. Ben's got to jump into the game because everybody's speeding up and, people are threatening the level that he's at. So he's got to change at some level. And I can appreciate somebody that's going to do that. But at the same time, I sort of miss that team sort of fighting against the tide that is coming of the Zane Fords of the world and people just all out ripping anything they can. Eddie, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so for the longest time, women's doubles has been my favorite of all the pro events, and it's because even though they are speeding up balls, they're also able to reset them, and those types of plays in the men's game is 1, 2, 3 shots and it's over, right? So now that we're getting away from the long dink rallies and the strategy and the placement and moving to power, the men's game has become even more boring for me. So the women's game has been my favorite and then mixed because of the strategy piece of it. I'm a little concerned now that Anna Lee and Anna Bright are teaming up. Love them both, big fans of them both. I understand why they want to play together. This isn't a judgment against the decision. I'm concerned now that it's not going to be they're going to be too dominant. There's nobody else that can come close to them right now, in both of them in the court, and it's going to end up being more of the things that I've complained about when watching PPA, where it's more of the same, more of the tournaments won. And so I'm a little disappointed that I think the women's game is about to kind of go where the men's game went over the last couple years.
Yeah, and I could be completely wrong, but I actually feel that the gap has closed enough between people like Tyra, Georgia, Paris, Etta, that their confidence is different now because they see it's possible. They haven't beaten them together, obviously, and they haven't played together in a couple of years. But I just feel that there's a different confidence, specifically with Tyra and Georgia. And I think in the beginning, I do think it'll take a little while for people to get used to Anna and figure them out. But I do think I don't know if we're going to quite see the amount of domination that we've seen over the last 2 years in any of the disciplines. I think the level has risen, but I think more importantly, the confidence level has risen, and people see they can do it. And once you start to crack that door, hopefully the floodgates open a little bit and becomes more like that's why I enjoy MLP, because it's mixed up. It's not such dominant teams winning week in and week out on the PPA, which is tough to watch after a while.
I hope you're right. I really do. And I agree. I think MLP is an incredible format, and I'm excited for it to get back up and going.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fellas, I don't want to take up all of your time. I'd love to do this again sometime, and because you guys have a lot of thoughts, you have a ton of experience, you've met a bunch of people, and you're doing some pretty cool things. Any last thoughts before we get you out of here, Webby?
First off, I just want to say thanks for having us. It's pretty cool to be on the other side and just kind of be asked the questions instead of having to think of questions to ask. I kind of like that. But no, I do think it'd be fun to connect again and have another conversation. And yeah, all I got to say is keep on pickling. I've never said that before, but it sounded kind of stupid too. But pickleball for life. I finished my beer.
Life.
I finished my beer. I'm out of deep thoughts for the moment.
I'm out of deep thoughts. All right, thanks, fellas. Obviously, you can find the link in the description. If you don't already know where Eddie and Webby's podcast is, check it out. They're approaching their 100th episode of Dinking Around. I think they're in the mid-90s now. And for closing, in 1994, when Webby was only 13, I got married that year, which would have made me 14. All right, with that being said, we'll see you guys soon.
All right, see ya. Thanks for having us.
Hope you enjoyed our conversation with Eddie and Webby. Check out all other episodes, link in the description. Support those guys. They're doing amazing things. All right, folks, you know what to do at the end of the day. Let's pickle.